Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz. We are here with another episode, and I got to take a moment and tell you all, I am enjoying this so much. Like this whole discovery with the podcast world and The Wedding Biz. I mean, I know I started this a while ago, launched a year and a half ago, got the idea literally like 3.5 years ago, and finally basically got off my ass and started it is what I did. But I love doing this, to have the opportunity to sit down with people, such creative people who are so passionate and have given their life, their blood. I mean, you know how this is, all of us who are in the business. It takes so much. And to be able to listen week after week to all these incredible stories. And as you all have noticed, people are letting go. People are being vulnerable on the show. And it just feels like a great honor. And I just can't thank you all enough who are keeping this going, you know, in terms of the reviews and the messages and the comments when I'm at conferences and stuff like that. And even the guests themselves who are listening to the show. So I just feel very grateful right now. So if you missed last week's episode, I want to remind you, it was Jennifer Zabinski of Jay-Z Events. She considers herself a planner first. It was a really fascinating interview and conversation. I urge you to check it out if you haven't. And don't forget the Wedding Biz Network that we launched several months ago with our first host, Julie Sabatino of The Stylish Bride. Brides are loving her show. We're getting a lot of comments, and so are planners. And we're hearing from all kinds of people who are really enjoying Julie's show. So be sure to check that out. So today's guest is the photographer Andrè Maier. Based in New York City, Los Angeles, and traveling worldwide, Andrè Maier Photography captures weddings, mitzvahs, and other events with effortless creativity, and you're about to hear what we mean by that. Andrè and his team's shooting style is really relaxed, like his personality, natural yet deliberate, and Andrè is a real special guy. He is one of the nicest and most thoughtful people I've met, and I really feel lucky to say that we have become great friends. You know, I just want to take a moment and say, wouldn't we all like to have more exposure in our markets? I mean, certainly our own handling of social media and various other tools are ways that we do gain more presence. Though, what if you could have professional outside help that you could depend on to really get you the results that you need? And I know we all are happy to get much more presence. Well, I want to tell you about our sponsor of today, OFD Consulting. They are an award-winning publicity agency that focuses on the wedding industry, and their client portfolio ranges from top-tier planners and venues to well-regarded national brands and industry thought leaders. And OFD Consulting has placed clients in a slew of popular online and offline publications, including the New York Times, Martha Stewart Weddings, Style Me Pretty, many others. And they also have a service that's dedicated entirely to B2B press for those looking to elevate their brand reputation among peers through online mentions, guest articles, podcasts, and speaking engagements. So if you are a small business and you want to get your name out there, get more exposure for your brand, get your message out there, and you want to just like dip your toes in the PR waters, check out the OFD Collective, which is a 3-star membership with robust educational and coaching opportunities, along with ongoing press leads. So definitely check out ofdconsulting.com. Again, that's ofdconsulting.com. So enjoy my conversation with Andrè Maier. So Andrè, it is so good to have you on the show, man. After meeting you in Banff at Engage, had such a great time.
It was awesome. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. It's going to be fun.
You know, it was interesting, Andrè, when I was looking at your history that the public is aware of, you, I guess, was going for chemistry and molecular biology at King's College London. To think of who you are today, and I know you ended up going to the prestigious London College of Printing for photography. That is so interesting to me, chemistry and biology.
Yeah, that's definitely what I started with. So in high school, I was really good at everything science. And I loved photography. Photography I've done forever. But the science is what I was good at as photography. And of course, when it comes to choosing a choice, like a career for life, then the science seemed the reasonable one. And my parents definitely very strongly encouraged the science.
Were they kind of strict? They were pushing you in that way?
No, not at all. But it was like the obvious choice as far as like a career where you can possibly make money. Science was it. So I did study chemistry in Berlin for 2 years. Then I moved to London. I did molecular biology there. And all throughout college, I was the president of the Photographic Society in London. I ran the darkroom. I always did photography. And then at the end, after studying, I thought, I really want to do photography.
Well, but going back, where did this come from? Your love for photography, your passion? You say you did it all the time from being like a little boy?
I probably started at age like 13, 14. I was kind of young. My dad had a reasonably good SLR camera and I was really into plants. And like my father grows very rare orchids and I was really into carnivorous plants like Venus flytraps and so on. So I was really into like growing them. And actually that's how I paid my whole life through college. I was buying those carnivorous plants in Holland and selling them on flea markets in Germany and England because my dad is in that world. But my first pictures were actually like macro close-ups of those plants that I just took them for making posters for the flea markets and I was really into it. And so that's why I actually, even today, I still love flowers and decor and I really get along well with all the florists just because I have this like love for plants and beautiful plants. And that's really how my photography started, with close-ups of carnivorous plants. I ended up having a show. They're still at like Getty Images, so they still sell my carnivorous plants that I took when I was 14. But that's how I started with photography.
Well, but also there's like an entrepreneurial spirit about you that you would even as a teenager to think of, right, of buying these flowers and then reselling them in a sense. I mean, well, that is what you did.
That's exactly what I did. And I actually made for like a 15-year-old, I made a lot of money and it really paid my whole way through college. I mean, in Europe, college is free anyway, but like I always had enough money to travel whenever I wanted. And I've always loved traveling. So that was big for me. So I really, after high school, I never got any money from my parents anymore because I didn't need it. I really supported myself pretty much right away after I moved out of my house.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, you make me think. I remember when I was 12, I was tired of having fights with my parents, especially my father, about money. And I said, I'm just going to go make my own. And I started a lawn mowing business so I wouldn't have to ask him for money.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And I always felt really good about it. And they supported me and they helped me and they let me use their car to like drive to the flea markets and and use their like wholesale cards to buy flowers and plants in Holland. I've always loved doing my own thing and being independent and making my own money.
Well, and that's interesting too, is that you're learning about the business of business while you're doing this. I mean, all of these things which might have seemed natural to you, right? I mean, that's an extension of being an entrepreneur.
And it's actually surprisingly similar, I think. I started on flea markets, so it's all about sales and these plants. They're really tiny and they're not that pretty that I was selling. They're interesting, but they're really not beautiful. I mean, I think they are, but they're different. So there's always been this aspect of me having to sell and explain to people and explain what I'm selling and why I'm selling it and why it's good for them to have this or interesting or exciting because it's so different. And I think it kind of carries over into any business probably. Like this skill of sales and connecting with people and talking to people and I guess really also believing in what you're selling because I was totally into them.
So really you were expressing your passion for them and grabbing attention that way, would you say?
I think so. And I think people could see that I wasn't faking it. I was really into it. It wasn't just a sales trick. And I probably do the same thing now. I think it really hasn't changed. I'm just selling photography in a way.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. For some reason, I'm getting this phrase that's as if they're buying your passion. They're buying a passion, back then.
They are, I think. Yeah. Or at least I think it carries over or they get infected a little bit by it. And after they talk to me, they kind of, I think, got a sense why I was so into these plants that would eat insects, basically. And now they had to have one too. And,
Well, so you're in college and you're studying, like you said, chemistry and then molecular biology in London. Where was the transition to then photography? Were you finding that you didn't like it so much? I mean, how did you feel about taking these classes at that point?
No, I was always into it and I always really enjoyed it. Like I said, I always did photography on the side and I was very active in photography, both taking photos and organizing other people around photography. So I started like the photography club in King's College London and we did like photo excursions and invited photographers. But I think if there is one thing that really changed my mind, I took one class at King's College, which really changed me in a way, which was with Maurice Wilkins is his name. He was the professor. He was in his 80s then. He was an old guy, and he's the one that discovered the double helix of the DNA with Watson and Crick back in the 50s or whenever they did. So he got the Nobel Prize for that. So he was like super accomplished scientist. He then worked on the Oppenheimer project in America to build the first atomic bomb that was then dropped, of course, on Japan. So he was very much involved in that part. And after they dropped the bomb, he completely gave up science, and he decided, this is so horrible. I've been participating in research because I got so carried away in the scientific part of it and the research aspect about developing something new and harnessing energy the way a nuclear bomb can, that I completely did miss the part that this is going to kill hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of people. So all he did was teach the ethics of science. That was his class, and that's the class I took. And I realized I don't really want to be a scientist. And I see how you can get so carried away in the discovery part of science that it's very easy to overlook the ethics of it and how awful this can be.
Can you give me some examples? I mean, I understand with the bomb, I get that one, but in general, the ethics of science as far as what it's used for across the board?
Yeah, what it's used for across the board. So it's anything like chemicals suddenly become chemical weapons. There's a lot of warfare that I think most of the products that are used really weren't, like the scientists who discovered them never thought about awful applications. So, I mean, there's of course a lot of good science does, and I still really enjoy reading about science, but I realized, and then part of what we had to do, we had to kill a lot of rats. And I didn't enjoy that. I don't like rats, but...
Wait, they would make you kill the rats?
Yeah, that was part of our experimenting. And it's molecular biology, so you have to inject things into animals, and all of that was something I didn't... I mean, I know it's part of science, but I really didn't want to do it myself. So in the end, I know I loved photography. So after I was done studying my chemistry, I thought I'm just going to add a year of photography at London College of Printing, and because that's what I really want to do. And so I had the science and I could have gone back to it. But after the year of photography, I thought, this is it. I love this. That's what I'm...
Well, that year of photography, what was that like for you?
I loved it. I felt so free and at home, and it was really what I wanted to do. And even though I don't even know if you can teach photography or even really any art, but just having all this time dedicated to doing nothing but that, where it's not a side project anymore, but all I do every day is photography and every aspect of it. And I loved it.
Well, and what about all the people surrounding you too, right? You must have been with like-minded people.
Right. And you're around all the other photographers, both the students and the teachers and the environment. It was just fantastic and I loved it. And I knew this is really what I enjoy doing, and I haven't looked back.
So as the year was coming to a close, did you already have an idea of, for example, going into the event industry? What were you thinking as far as monetizing it?
No, I didn't have any idea. So after I was done studying, what I really loved doing was photojournalism. And I still do, really. I still do that a lot. And right after college, I came to New York with my then girlfriend. She got an internship at the United Nations as a translator. So we thought, let's just spend the summer in New York until we figure out what we're going to do with our lives, because we both had just finished college. And we both really liked New York. So I've never left since then. So I just decided to stay in New York and make it work. So I worked for like European and some US newspapers and magazines. I did like little assignments, did a lot of nightclub photography, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Well, can I ask before we continue? I mean, I have my own assumption of what photojournalism is, but if you could define that in your eyes, how do you define photojournalism, that style?
Just generally, it's capturing things as they happen without interfering, I guess, without staging or without interfering. And I'm not quite doing that anymore. So I'm definitely not like a wartime photojournalist, far from it. Although I think that's the most admirable photography. But it's really documenting things as they happen and like authentic scenes where a photo should tell a story within each, both a collection of pictures should be a story, but each photo should have like a little story within it where it's not just one thing. And
so what were some examples in the beginning when you started to get hired in New York to do, you said for some newspapers, magazines, what were some of the type of jobs that you were shooting?
It was pretty random. It's I had like 2 German papers that I don't think either of them exists anymore. So they would just call me whenever they had an interesting story. I did a lot of concerts like Central Park.
Ooh,
like
how did you
Summer
enjoy that?
Stage. I loved it.
Who were some of the acts?
One that was a band called Femme to Femme. And I don't think they exist anymore either. They were popular at the time, like a while ago. But it was a bunch of different things. And then a lot of nightclub photography. And then I did a whole lot of fashion photography too for a while. So somehow I slid into that just because I had all these connections to European magazines. They said, we have a photographer in New York and let's...
But in terms of fashion photography, isn't there a certain amount of like directing people what to do?
A lot, yes.
So you had to adjust, or how was that for you?
In college, I did all of it. And the photojournalism is what I started with. And then I always enjoyed portraiture as well. And I still do. I love doing the whole range of things. So fashion just happened. They just said, can you do like a fashion shoot for us? We have these clothes from this like East Village designer that we really want photographed. So I just did it, and then I did good, I guess. And they kept asking me for more. And then I did some fashion shows, like the Bryant Park fashion show. So and in the beginning, I just took whatever. It's like anything that lets me use my camera and make a few dollars I was happy doing.
Yeah, what were some of your favorite kind of shoots? Or was it just everything? Or did you kind of start to lean in towards some particular type of...
It was everything. I really am still. I mean, if you tell me, can you take photos of this? I'd love to do it. And no matter what, I really do just like to explore new things all the time with the camera as well. But whatever came my way, I really enjoyed it.
So how did you make your way then into events in terms of weddings and corporate and all of that?
I know, exactly. So my very first wedding was my best friend then who got married. And it was a small wedding. It was in Manhattan. And he said, hey, do you want to take pictures? And I said, yeah, sure. So that was my very first wedding. I photographed his wedding or their wedding. And that was 20-something years ago, 23 years ago, 22 years ago.
What was that like for you, being your first time?
It was really stressful. And I think I screwed up quite a bit too. I kind of got the exposures wrong. And I had, it was like film. So I had like a big medium format camera with big film. We had to crank the camera and crank the film and rewind it. And you didn't know what you were getting until like a week later with film. So, and I know I missed a few moments because I didn't time changing the rolls right. I definitely screwed up quite a bit, but he was a good friend and he's still happy with his photos. He's still a friend. That's a good sign.
You know, it's so interesting to me how, in a sense, you kind of fell into it, that this person came to you. So many people I interview for the show, it's really surprising to me, especially planners in particular, designers. So many people are asked by a friend, can you do my wedding or something like that, as opposed to this real, direct, just say, okay, I want to shoot, I want to photograph weddings. I want to build a business. I want to get a clientele. I want to get the industry to recommend me. I mean, it's so interesting how that happened.
Yeah, I definitely slid into it. And at the time, so I did my first friend's wedding, then like some other people who saw the photos, mutual friends asked me, and they said, okay, I can ask for money for this. So I asked like $500 a wedding. And I thought that was insane that I would get $500 for 1 day of work. It's like, so and at the time I had an agent for my like commercial work who was the director of Magnum Photo Agency. So I told him, and he had nothing to do with the wedding side. And he just got me tried to get me advertising and editorial work. And I said, Tom, this is amazing. I just got $500 for 1 day. It's ridiculous, insane. And he said, you're really good at this. And you're already like a photojournalist. If you do this, there's no reason why you can't get 5,000. And I said, no, come on. It was just like ridiculous, the idea of getting $5,000 for a day's work. He kind of pushed me towards weddings a little bit, even though he wouldn't get any money. And he said, that's what you do with weddings. Your work is very different from like the formal stiff posts thing that other wedding photographers do. It's years ago. It was like the 90s.
Yeah, so that's when it was mostly portraiture, wasn't it?
It was all really stiff, boring portraits where every bridal portrait looked the same with different heads on the same photo, basically. So he said, what you're doing here is really interesting, and you're taking this photojournalism and you're making it into weddings, and it's like the best kind of photojournalism where the people actually really care about your work versus magazines. You take the photo, they run it, and then a week later, it's just old and nobody cares, and nobody really ever cares about your photos. And with weddings, people really cherish the photos. They keep them forever. They probably show them to their grandchildren, and you're getting paid way more than a newspaper will ever pay you.
Jeez, this is so astute of him to say that. But what about you? When you were doing this, were you aware that this was different, or were you just simply doing what you do and then you found out later?
No, I just did what I like to do. I didn't really know there was a wedding industry even when I started. I didn't get into that. And then as I did more and I started charging a little more money, I started meeting other people, and I always became friends with the florists first somehow. They were like my buddies because of the flowers. So, and they always liked me because I've always taken good photos of plants and flowers. So I don't know. I feel the flowers, I suppose.
But what do you mean you feel the flower? Yeah, I mean, there is life to them.
There's life to them. And
so you feel like a connection with the flowers.
Yeah, and with the beauty. And I really photograph them the way I feel them rather than what's just there. So,
I love that. Yeah.
I know it's hard to explain, but there is something different. And weddings is all about the beauty and the decor. And I mean, it's not. It's all about the couple, really. But that part, like pretty part, is really all about like these designers designing something, like a scene that, I don't know, I just see it and I love it.
Yeah. You know, I'm also thinking, just to put this in context for a moment, you're also in New York City, an extremely competitive environment. And it's almost like you weren't even aware of that, right?
I didn't even realize that. I really didn't know there was competition. I knew like some of the big famous photography studios in New York City, and I didn't even really have a big ambition to be that because I never saw them as competition really at all, because I just loved what I did and I had my clients and I really liked my clients and they liked me, and that really hasn't changed actually until today.
But you weren't really targeting a particular type of photography that you were headed toward, like whether you were going to stay in fashion or just go to weddings.
No.
You were just kind of taking what was coming to you, basically?
I was taking what was coming, and then as the weddings developed, I was definitely focusing more and more on those, because that's kind of what allowed me to pay my rent more, or like pay more rent. So I had a full-time job for a few years before I could actually survive with photography. I did work at the United Nations for 6 years or so. I was in the German translation section, and that was like my 9-to-5 job, which was probably the best shitty job anybody can hope for.
The best shitty job, that's great.
Because it's like a super mixed and diverse environment. They pay more than for the same work than elsewhere in New York, and they're very lenient. They have great benefits, but it was still a 9-to-5 job, which I did not like. So I realized that the weddings would actually be like my way out. So when Sylvia, my wife, got pregnant, that's when I kind of focused a little harder on the weddings. And so the day my oldest son was born, that was my last day at work. So the day he was born, she called me, I'm in labor, and like, I don't know, it was like lunchtime, and I said, I'm leaving. She's, giving birth, and I never went back. So I took like a year leave without pay just to be safe, and then I pretty much did a lot of weddings. I still did everything. I still had my agent, but the weddings just were so much more lucrative, and I loved it. I really enjoyed them, and I still do. It hasn't really changed.
I mean, that's interesting too. I mean, it's been so long, and I know that about you, Andrè. I mean, as I get to know you, you're so passionate, and I do see this enthusiastic, kind of almost childish kind of wonder at this. No, but I love it. And, we'll talk in a little bit about your photos. The photos I've seen, they evoke an emotion to me. So tell me more about why you love it. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but as far as you're with families, right? This is I imagine you're aware this is a big moment for them, and you feel the emotion. It seems, if I'm just going back to the flowers, you would feel the life, the emotion of the flower. Now we're talking about people.
And it's not that different. And it's very different actually, but I do feel it's kind of like an honor really to be there. And I love observing, I guess, just generally. And I feel a little bit like an anthropologist without the training of one. But I just love looking at scenes, looking at people, looking at everything. And I also enjoy not being part of it. So I feel like I have like a social, antisocial. I think a lot of people are. I enjoy being with people, but not for too long. And I feel the weddings give me this glimpse into different worlds that I would never be allowed into, whether it's different age groups or different religions or different cultures or different everything, they're very meaningful days where people let go of their guards very much, because it's very emotional. So I feel I get to peek into like these worlds and family dynamics that I'd never get access to on my own if I just stick with my friends, because we all usually hang out with people who are similar to ourselves, more or less. So I feel the weddings really give me a glance into something that I wouldn't get into. And I really enjoy it. And I think being a little bit outside also allows me to see their lives differently from being inside, where I really observe, but I also capture something that maybe when you're too deep embedded, you wouldn't see as something interesting. It's just like little glances, or how people hug or not hug, whether people kiss each other on the cheek or on the lips, or just don't touch each other at all. And, all these dynamics between people that I think within their families, they don't realize that what they're doing is unusual maybe to outsiders, because whatever we do is never unusual to ourselves, because that's what we do. And as like from outside, you see it. And I do love this whole idea of glimpsing in and becoming part of a family, but only like superficially, but deep at the same time. I don't know how to put it.
Wasn't there a photo, I think, on your website of where there's a little girl who's, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that right there, if you could describe it.
Yeah, and that is actually exactly what I'm always after at every wedding and everything I photograph, which is to go beyond the obvious. So that photo you're describing is, I think, it's like a little girl sitting in the front pew at a church, and you see the bride coming down the aisle with...
From behind her, right? Like she's not looking directly at them.
No, she's not looking at them. It looks like she's actually afraid to turn around and look, because, she knows they're coming. And so the bride is really just blurry in the background with her parents walking her down the aisle. And those are the photos I love taking. And I know that's the photos that make it into the albums for my couples too. But so I obviously have plenty of photos of the bride coming down sharp and in focus, and the way everybody else takes that, like bride coming down the aisle photo, which is like one of the standard must-have photos, of course. But I always feel once I have that must-have picture, there's always so much more going on around me by just stepping back or looking over my shoulder or turning around or zooming in or zooming out, where there's a story suddenly you can put in rather than bride coming down the aisle. It's of course part of the big story of the day and it's important, but there's always more, and it's the more that keeps me excited, I think, about weddings too.
Yeah. And that photo of the girl, it really struck me because like you're giving me the story, but it's like, I knew this from one single shot. I saw the girl. Yeah. First of all, I could see the anticipation in her face that they're coming, and she's nervous to just look around and look at them and be seen looking at them.
Yeah. You can see that she's been coached a lot, saying you have to behave. Yeah, she was the flower girl, so you can see she was nervous because she had to behave and she had to like not mess up. It looked like she knew there's the bride coming from behind, but she wasn't sure if she was allowed to turn around and how much, and if she could peek. So she just sat there like a little mortified but excited.
Yeah, I love that the way you grabbed that just completely. So I imagine that you must also feel moved at times if you're in it that much, or are you able to kind of control that side of you?
I mean, I don't cry. I am moved, and I'm moved by how people are with each other, and like couples are with each other, or people with their parents. And it is moving. And I hear some stories where you think, wow, this is such a beautiful love story. And there's always a love story. And some are just transactional, so it's not always a beautiful love story, but there's a lot of them. And I love when I see like two people that are together where you feel, yeah, these guys really found each other. They're equally like weird and quirky, and they kind of belong to each other. Nobody else is going to watch. I don't know, they will play like video games together or whatever they do,
Well, and what's hitting me right now is that because you are able to feel it like that, therefore, if you feel it, you recognize it, then you can capture it. Right? I mean, what are you going to capture if you're not feeling something in order to see it?
Yeah, I think you have to be involved somehow. You have to like be engaged with the couples. I don't think I would do a good job if I just couldn't stand the people or I felt nothing from them, because then the photos would just be boring, and then you wouldn't have to hire me. Just hire someone. You can hire someone off Craigslist if that's all you want. So I think there's...
Or you're just taking standard kind of shots.
Yeah, you definitely have to be involved and have a connection with your clients. And that goes for everything. It doesn't really matter whether it's fashion or a portrait or a bar mitzvah or a wedding. It's like the whole gamut. Even a corporate event, I feel you need, which are a lot less emotional.
But there's a story there.
There's a story there. And sometimes the bride is like the signage where that's important, where you have to capture the story that your clients are trying to tell. And I think that's really important.
So how about the story about the Dalai Lama? Now, talk about a story, right? So I know that you spent something like 5 days shooting the Dalai Lama. Can you tell me about how did that come about and what was that like?
That was really amazing, actually. So that's through a client, a production company company that I worked with many, many times. I've done a lot of corporate events and I still work with them a lot. So they produced this event, like the Dalai Lama's visit to Los Angeles for like a nonprofit organization. And so they asked me if I can shoot it. And of course I jumped on it. And that was really very special because it was purely photojournalism. They didn't want me to pose anybody or anything, just really shadow the Dalai Lama for 4 days, whatever he does, every audience, every meeting he has.
This is all day and you're following him everywhere he goes.
Everywhere he goes. Well, starting at like 10 or 11. I think he meditates every morning for like a long time. So I wasn't part of that. But like his official day, like once he became like the public Dalai Lama, I started and until the public part is over. So it was long days. So he had a lot of meetings with people. He had a lot of, for one thing, he's such a kind and general and like just a warm person. And what I found most interesting is the amount of security that's around him, like the Secret Service guys, all these people with machine guns protecting him. I mean, I know he's aware of it and he has his own whole like contingent of like people from his staff, but the Americans brought a lot of security for him as well. But he just constantly broke out and you could see there was all this, like they would pull out their hair because whenever he had like a road, you have to go from like the hotel room to the car to the venue where you are at. And he had a lot of like big performance, like speeches, like in big auditoriums with like hundreds and thousands of people that would listen to him. And in between, there was always like this logistic transportation where I guess they had to protect him. And he would just constantly break away from his protectors and just run up to like some family with a stroller and say hi and shake their hands and kiss them on the cheeks and have like and he didn't have a concept of time. Or, I mean, I'm sure he does, but he wouldn't rush through any interaction he had. I know he broke out at the Montage Hotel. He like talked with this like random couple that was there with their stroller and he talked with them for like 10 or 15 minutes when like, and all his security guys, nobody can tell him, come on, you gotta hurry. So they just have to wait, but he definitely doesn't rush. Once he's having an interaction with someone, he just takes whatever time he thinks is appropriate. And I was shooting those too. It was amazing. It's like the official interactions and the random ones that just happen. And the same like backstage where he had this, like Sheryl Crow was performing with him and he spent so much time just talking to the stagehands instead of going on stage where everybody was waiting for him because he just started a conversation with somebody. And I mean, it's really fascinating. He was a great guy and it was really...
What about interaction with you? Was there interaction between the two of you at any point?
Yeah, we talked a little bit, but very little. I was really... and quite deliberately like in the background. He talked with me every morning when I came in. He said hello and we chatted for like a quick second, but then he also pretty much ignored me, which I guess that was our roles.
Well, is there a place where we can see these photos?
I have him. I think there's that one portrait I took of him that I think I still have on my website. I have them up here, but maybe I should like put them somewhere on Instagram.
But are you not allowed to show them?
Yeah, I can show all of them.
Wow. Well, I want to come back to weddings in particular. Could you tell me what your process is like with a client from the time that you meet them and how that goes? The first moment that you meet them, what your process is like?
Well, I think the process probably starts long before I meet them. Well, I don't know. It probably starts with my website with like, my process starts with getting them to come to my website, and which is, well, that's more the networking part. But then once they're on my website, I hope that my websites give them already a sense of what I like to do and what they can expect from me. So not in terms of pricing, because I don't have that on my website, but in terms of my style and ideas and how I like to photograph, so that I'm hoping basically to turn away a whole lot of clients that would be inappropriate for me.
Interesting. But what do you mean by that? What is appropriate? What kind of a client is appropriate?
The kind of clients I get along with and I wouldn't mind having a drink with, I guess. I don't get a lot of super formal traditional weddings. And I'm kind of happy because I hear a lot of horror stories from other photographers and wedding vendors with difficult and bridezillas. And I mean, I've done this for over 20 years and I don't think I've ever had a bridezilla. I've never had a bride where, or like a couple or a family where I thought, I hate these people. And everybody else says they do and they just get through it and deal with it. But I really, honestly, I think I've done a pretty good job at selecting people, or like we mutually selecting or explaining what I do so that the ones that don't work won't hire me. And then I hate when somebody doesn't hire me because I think I'd be fine for everybody. But in the end, it's probably better. And there have been clients where doing meetings where I said, I don't think we're the right match.
You've said that. So that also takes a certain amount of confidence and security that you don't have to take them all.
Yeah, I don't have to take everybody. And when they keep asking about like certain things that they really need to have, and are you sure you can do this? Or when they doubt so much whether I can even do it, I said, look, if you doubt that much, don't hide. Find someone that you trust. And that's really important.
I like that. Andrè, I love that. It's having that confidence. And I believe that obviously the more that you do that, the more you are attracting the people who you need to have.
So I think the ones that stick are the ones I really love and that we get along. And really, I've never had anybody where I didn't like the clients. And I also never had anybody that didn't like their photos, which of course goes hand in hand because my style is also what they're going to get. So if already they don't trust me in the first place, then they're probably not going to be that happy I don't know, I'm guessing. But really, I've never had anybody that hates their photos. Thank God. And people just let me do whatever I want to do at their weddings. I mean, there's like shot lists and there's very deliberate, like the profiles. And I do spend a lot of time on doing really beautiful portraits for them that are a lot more deliberate. But once they're done, people just trust that I do what I do best and that they get really beautiful pictures that tell a story, and they always do. So yeah, once they inquire, I kind of have like some email templates where I show them some photos, usually whenever I can, that have like some weddings of the venue that they're getting married. And at this point, I have most venues, I think.
Oh, interesting. To show within the context of that environment?
Yeah, so I can show them, if they're getting married at the Rainbow Room, I can show them, here's a wedding at the Rainbow Room, or in Los Angeles at the Beverly Hills Hotel. It doesn't matter. So I kind of try to show them a wedding that's similar to what they're planning, if it's outdoor or if it's indoor, if it's a church or if it's on the beach. So I have so many different weddings that I can show them something that they can probably relate to, where it's like my photos in a setting that will be somewhat similar to their own. But then usually we have a phone conversation, or maybe they just come in and meet. But during the process is really generally, by the time clients meet with me or have like a phone interview, I guess, a longer conversation, they usually have a general sense of what I do. We've emailed already, so they get an idea of my photos. They have seen them on my website, of course. So they usually kind of like what I can give them already. And then a lot of our conversation actually is really just me explaining what I like to do to them before I even show them photos in the meeting. Because I really think they've already seen the pictures and they come to meet me rather than see the photos again. I mean, the photos look much nicer in the album, as we can go back up and you'll see the album. I do like physical pictures and I do like albums, and it does look much nicer than online, but it's the same photos. But to me, it's really about talking with them, getting a connection, and see if we can get along. Because really, I'm so close to them on such an important day, we kind of have to get along. I have to like them, so that what I really want to capture is beauty. That's what I like, what I said with the plants, but people is the same thing. I'm not interested in awkward photos or unflattering pictures or like a close-up of an elbow. I'm not that artsy, I guess. I really want beautiful, flattering photos, and it means I have to see the beauty in every client. And not every client is a model, and that's fine. And I do feel a happy person is always beautiful. It doesn't matter whether you're tall or little or big or thin. And there's like something in their eyes, and I have to see it. And they have to feel comfortable having me around, because otherwise they'll just be tense, right? There's a vulnerability. So they have to be free to be able to either just ignore me or be comfortable enough to be themselves in front of me and be emotional. And also, if they tense, then that comes through in the photos too. And that wouldn't be pretty unless it's tense because they're about to walk down the aisle, and it's beautiful again if it's nervous. But if I make them tense, that's not good. If they're just tense because they're excited, then that can be interesting too. But after that, especially for like those posed photos that are a little more deliberate, it's really important that they're comfortable with me more. And that doesn't matter whether they're used to being photographed or not. And most people are not. Not many people are models and actors. And even the models and actors, I have to get something different from them than what they're used to, because I don't want them to model in their bridal outfit. I really want them to be themselves, which isn't similar, and obviously they'll be beautiful and have a great, perfect smile, but it's still not quite the same. And I want, especially with couples, I want to photograph the connection. And for couples, I really do feel like a couple has its own personality that's different from the bride's personality and the groom's personality. They each have their own, and that's great. But once two people come together, the couple has really its own thing, as if it wasn't its own person. And maybe that's why they're doing this for. They become one, right? That's kind of like the cliche.
Well, yeah, but especially for a wedding, that's what it's about. It's about the couple.
It's about the couple, and I want to photograph the couple as well. And I really do think that couples have their own personality, where they can be quirky together, even though they're very shy on their own. And people are different in a couple. I know me with my wife. We're not the same when we're together, or when we're out as a couple. We're a different thing than each on our own. And I think everybody is. And I really want to get that.
Yeah, it's a whole different dynamic. Yeah. Well, it's like going back to chemistry. It's a mix of the chemical elements.
Yeah, it's a mix, and everybody amplifies some aspect of the other or removes some aspect of the other. And I really want to get that, and that's important to me, and that's tricky to do. And what's the most important, I think, is just comfort. I mean, you have to be comfortable with each other, and especially for that part where it's just the three of us, or, the two of them and me, and I guess my assistant, and maybe like a bridesmaid or other people helping. But it's really just the two of them in front of a camera, and that can be intimidating, and it can be like awkward, and it takes sometimes a few minutes for me to get them to relax and just be with each other. And that's really what I want to do. I just don't want two people staring at the camera, and that's, with like no expression. I do one of those, and that's usually how we start. But generally, with like a portrait session, we're pretty good at getting people to become themselves, no matter what it is, no matter what it takes. I'm not making people pose in any which way. Not everybody does the same thing, and I don't run through like routines with my couples, because, what's fun for one couple is just really stupid for another. So that's...
Yeah. Well, I also imagine like your whole demeanor is very relaxed, and someone in your position could feel a lot of pressure in terms of what's the weight on your response. But I get the feeling that part of this for you is letting go, right? So that I imagine, and they sense that, and then relaxed, they become relaxed.
It's important. I get a lot of like emails or thank you notes, and even on the day, it's like, oh my God, you made it so much more comforting and relaxing. Like just having you there was so reassuring. Because really, I mean, it's a wedding, but it's a beautiful day, and there doesn't need to be drama, and there doesn't need to be stress. And I don't stress, and I don't think I ever really have, but now I've done this so much that I don't think anything really phases me. It's like, no matter what, like my gear, I got that under control. That's just part of my hand. And even if things break, I'm pretty quick at figuring out what is going wrong and fix it without sweating. And the same with family dynamics, because there's definitely some crazy shit going on with families.
Yeah, I was about to ask the stuff you say. I'm assuming you stop shooting when you see the crazy stuff.
I stop shooting when they're fighting, right. Or when and there's always some crazy stuff going on. I mean, not always, and I do kind of de-escalate sometimes. Like every now and then I get like a do not shoot list from like somebody, like say, just make sure you don't get any photo of my brother's girlfriend. She's a bitch and everybody hates her. It's like that. Or my dad's new wife. And like, it's people that are kind of close, but where like the bride or the groom hates one particular like spouse or girlfriend. Or like...
Do you follow? I guess you must follow their direction.
No, I don't. And I talk to them and I say, look, here's the thing. I understand you don't like your dad's new girlfriend or wife or whatever, but I have to take that photo, and I will. And
they just don't have to do anything with it.
You can delete it. And if you prefer, I can also never show it to you. I said, I'm going to take some really beautiful photos of your dad with his hated girlfriend. And if you tell me, and I've had that with one older couple where the bride said, I don't want any photos of my husband's children. Oh, grown children. They were adults. So they were like in their 60s or so. And I said, I understand you don't get along and they don't like you, but I'm going to take those photos. I'll never show them to you, but I'll have them and I'll keep them if it changes.
And why, Andrè? Why do you need to take them?
Because I feel that's really a big part of the story. The fact that they are there means somebody invited them, and they probably should be there, especially if it's like that close a person. I understand you don't need, I don't know, your co-worker's like girlfriend that he just met the week before. But if it's your husband's children, it's probably different, or your dad's wife. And they always understand. And nobody's ever said, no, absolutely, you cannot. So I just tell everybody, I'm going to be nice to those hated persons. I'm going to be really charming. I'll take the photos and I leave it up to you. I can give them to you and you just delete them yourself, or I just won't even show them to you. And if something changes, and it's happened several times where people say, I know I didn't want any photos, but actually like my brother just married like this girlfriend that I couldn't stand and we get along just fine. Do you happen to have any other photos? And so things change and emotions change. And you're like, like just because you've been fighting with one person doesn't mean it's going to last forever, especially if that person stays in your life. So I really do want, and to me, I also do think it's my role to be documenting everything. So of course, I always listen to my clients and I take direction. But if I feel what they're telling me is they're going to possibly regret, or if they tell me to like not be nice to a person, I can't do that. I can't change who I am, what I do for anybody, I think. So I'm always going to be friendly to everybody, even if you hate them, even if they're an asshole, and then it's up to them. They can decide what goes in their album and what they delete.
Yeah. I would also like to come back because a while ago in our conversation, you mentioned networking for a moment. And I want to come back to the business aspect for a second, because I remember at Engage, we were talking, it was because we met on this shuttle that was going from the airport, it was like 2.5 hours. And we were talking about the networking aspect of, it doesn't have to even be that particular one, but a conference and networking in general. And you said something that really struck me about your attitude about it. Whereas, talking to people about it, there were a lot of people that also were somewhat on edge and, kind of had their targets and, wanted to meet certain people, get certain things accomplished and get hired by certain people. And it creates this environment that is not necessarily the healthiest. And so what gets like that, and what we were talking about was going with more of a relaxed attitude. I mean, if you could tell this story, your philosophy about it, it just struck me.
Yeah, so I do go to a lot of networking events and like obviously Engage, but also here. And I never enjoy the thought of going, but I always love once I'm there. It's always like I have to force myself to actually get dressed and go, or like to pay the fee and pay for Engage, or like get on the plane. But once I'm there, I always really, really enjoy it. And like kind of what you hinted is, I never go with a specific aim or like a target or a person I really want to meet or get something out of, because I don't think it works, or at least it doesn't work for me. I don't function that way. I just enjoy meeting people who are like-minded and who live in the same like professional world I do. And I don't even think it's a professional world. We all really like what we do, I think, or most of us. So it's just, and really enjoy, and especially engage in all the networking events. At this point, wherever I go, I usually know a pretty large number of people already that I'm friendly with. So I just look forward to even hanging out with people I already like, and I already know that may already be recommending me or not, doesn't matter, but where it's in like a natural environment rather than working together. There's a lot of people I work with a lot, and when we're working, we're friendly, we say hi and we chat for like a quick second, and then everybody has to run off and do what they're hired to do. So at the networking events, you have a little more time, it's a little more chill, and especially engaged because you actually have real time versus like some like 3-hour networking event.
Yes, but it sounds like you are also, in a sense, trusting serendipity, that these other people, right, that you don't know, by having this attitude of coming in more relaxed. And I love what you said about, and this relates back to not taking all clients, right? A certain amount of like-mindedness and getting this natural connection with people, those are who you want to work with the most. So I get the impression coming with that attitude, you are attracting these people. I would think that every event you are probably making some amazing connections that you didn't know you would be making.
I do every time. And I really never go in expecting anything. And I know some people go in saying, I only want to talk to planners. So I'm just going to completely diss
or they're spending a lot of money. They feel I want to make sure I get the value out of it.
Right. And I have to meet the planners because they're the ones that are going to get me work. But then they're going to diss the band or florist and I don't know, whoever. But I don't see. I just want to chat with people. And that's how kind of like we started talking and became friends, which honestly, it didn't seem like you'll be helping me and me you at all. I mean, but that definitely wasn't the purpose. You just hang out and you chat and you say, well, I like talking to this person. And then you keep talking to a person.
No, that's true. And little did we know, I mean, it's too soon to announce, there's a project we're collaborating on, and who, from the podcast perspective, but who would have possibly known? There, when I met you, same thing, photographer, technically, quote unquote, photographer. I've got the music, I have the podcast. What are you going to... And like you say, same thing. And yet, it is because of this connection that we forged. And also it's interesting, Andrè, I'm thinking, and this must happen with other people who you meet, again, the serendipity of it is that although we did not know what our meeting would lead to, and there was no intention of business necessarily, but we kept running into each other over and over again, which I feel was part of this whole kind of zone. And it wasn't until toward the end that we got this creative idea together. And so...
But I think that's exactly what it is. You just become friends with somebody, or you have a connection with certain people, and it's not because you calculate, oh, you can help me or not. I mean, maybe not, but it's irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. I don't talk to a person just because they're a contact, or I don't diss a person because they're not. And you just never know.
So again, that's the thing, you never know. So, and again, you're going into it trusting. I mean, I know a lot of people, and in my early days of networking, and once in a while, I'm still in a zone where it's uncomfortable for me, but you actually helped me a lot. It was interesting, Andrè, this particular Engage, I've been to numerous networking events, and us talking like this ahead of time, you helped put me in this zone of, okay, let me just breathe here. It's a pain in the ass. Well, and I don't want to stalk and go after. Yeah, because of that attitude, it was one of the best experiences I had. And I made outrageous connections if you talk about from the business side. Again, there's things yet to be announced here, but yeah,
And it works that way. I really do. And I know I became friends with people there who I thought could never help me, because we're just in totally different worlds, in different parts of the country, in different markets where it just we're not in the same business. But we got along, and I kept hanging out with the same people. And I'm like this one person, I'm photographing her sister's wedding now. So it did become a good business move after all, but out of nowhere. And it's definitely not because I was hustling or we were even thinking of business. It's just you get along with somebody, and it doesn't matter that you can help each other or not. And really, I guess, especially at Engage, we really can all help each other, probably.
You know what? Even if it's not directly with business, one of the things about these conferences, in particular that one, is there's also, people have various fears and anxiety about things. And just, some people, there's challenges. And just simply to talk, right? And to connect and to share, that alone, it doesn't necessarily lead to some kind of, getting hired.
And it shouldn't. I mean, it doesn't have to. And I know, because Engage is such a big investment for at least us freelancers who pay for it ourselves. It's a lot of money, and everybody feels like you have to get your money's worth. And it's hard going in with that attitude, because then you start, and I know some people who do, talking at Engage, who calculate the whole time while they're there. How much money can I get out of this interaction? Is this going to pay back the cost of being here? And it never works.
Yeah, and ironically, I would say this approach we're talking about, ironically, probably gives far more return on investment.
So far, I've definitely have had more business in money terms than I've spent on Engage. I'm happy with that, but I don't even know if that's how I calculate, and you can't calculate it that way.
Well, I also wanted to ask in a whole nother place, looking through your site, and you had told me about this when we met, you showed me these pictures of your family that you take every 6 months, in these different environments, whether usually a vacation. It was interesting to me, when you showed me these pictures, I was blown away by them. And again, and we'll come in a moment and people could see them. What was interesting to me was that you put it on your website.
I do. And I did a few years ago, because they've almost become like my business card now, or everybody knows. I mean, everybody here, they like my holiday card every year.
Can you describe them for the sake of people listening?
So ever since my wife was pregnant with our oldest son, he just turned 18. So it's just about 19 years ago we started. And it was really just a picture of her pregnant at the midwives, and we dressed up and we made it funny. And it was just a weird, goofy pregnancy photo with me in it though. But then we've kept this concept going for 18 years. So every 6 months we've taken a different family portrait with costumes, costumes and a theme, and they've become more elaborate. We've rented the US Open tennis courts where we were tennis players, and we travel a lot. We've been golfers in Florida and circus people in Venice, Italy. And so wherever we go, we take it's always twice a year, and it's always become now my holiday card, and people love them. And I know a lot of people look forward to them, but we've always just done it because we just thought it was really fun. I should say my wife's an artist. She's a painter. She's doing really well. She has her own gallery here in Chelsea. But so we don't really take ourselves very seriously. So there's some nude ones. There's some really weird wrapped up in orange fabric. And we've been cross-dressing many times. So our kids they're used to not caring either. And it's hard to cross-dress two teenage boys, but they've played along.
You would think. I know this picture you're talking about. Right.
In Greece, we did that. We're all...
Yeah. And you just came back from Japan.
And we just came back from Japan, so we did something funny there too. But we've always done it. And I've put it on my website because I really feel that's how people get who I am. I mean, it's so not like a wedding or a bar mitzvah or an event at all, because there's nothing journalistic. It's really totally posed. It's all studio or like deliberate lighting. It's very deliberate photo shoot with a concept, with a stylist sometimes and makeup. But I think it really shows my sense of humor and being like not very serious about myself.
Then you don't want those.
And I think you don't want clients who think it's just totally outrageous and weird.
Okay.
I don't want them.
Yeah.
And chances I never hear from them because they just move right on and go to like some conservative studio and it's fine. But the people who do see him and love him, then there's already a connection and they feel that they know my family and it creates a connection and trust. And I think if you look through them, you really do know our family, even though they're like nothing every day at all about these pictures, but as a collection. So we have I think 35 or so photos now. So it's a lot of them. And
your pets too?
They definitely tell a little story and like how bizarre we are. So all our pets have been in the photos. Like our pets have come in. We've had a bunch of pets that have come and gone. I think all of them made it in some photo or the other.
Yeah. Well, as we head toward wrapping up, I also want to ask you, where do you think you're going with photography? Do you think much into the future?
I do constantly, actually. And I do constantly think about getting better and changing with the times and with my own philosophy and ideas. So I do think into the future, and some of it is like I've been expanding to the West Coast quite a bit, so I'm now bi-coastal, so I really want to do more destination work. I already do a lot of work because I enjoy traveling, and I deliberately stayed away when my kids were young because I really just wanted to be close to them. Now one is in college, the other one has 2 years left in high school, so they're fine on their own. And I've always loved traveling, and we've always traveled as a family and me on my own. So that's part of one thing I want to do more. But also in my style of photography, I've been doing a lot more portraiture because I really enjoy more deliberate portraits, and maybe because
I bring an environment into it, right?
I bring an environment, so I kind of do what we have always done with our family into the wedding as well.
People got to see this. We'll put a link.
I mean, it's not dressed up like crazy like we do, but it's the same idea, but with a wedding outfit, where it's more like an environmental portrait that has it's like more spectacular or grand, I guess. So I do change a little bit, or quite a bit, I suppose. But my philosophy is always kind of, I think, staying the same, where I just want like nice people around me. Yeah,
no, it comes back to that. And just briefly, for the photographers out there, what kind of equipment do you use?
Nikon D850s. It's whatever the latest Nikon camera is what I have, with a gazillion lenses, and Pro Photo lights is all I use for the lighting. I always bring an assistant to my weddings who helps me with lighting, especially to the portrait session. One thing, talking about the future going forward, I always give clients a selection of photos now the next morning. So we spend a lot of time editing on site so that everybody gets at least like 20 or 30 photos either that night or the next morning, because everybody needs to Instagram their photos
That's
immediately.
Right. Well, okay, for a moment, since we're there, how do you feel about social media?
I love it. I'm really enjoying it. It's all about photos, and I got those and I like it. So, which is part of why I started giving clients edited, beautiful pictures right away, because I know they want to post something, and I'd much rather they post my photo and tag me than the shitty iPhone photos that they get from everybody else. So in the end, I mean, they're happy and I'm happy because they're also promoting me. So some of it is of self-serving, but really clients love it and I enjoy it. And I do like social media.
So what is the best way, Andrè, for people to learn more about you and reach you?
I guess my website is always the number one. That's the most comprehensive, and it has everything. It has all the segments of the different things I do, including my families. And then Instagram is more shifting, but it's similar too.
And your Instagram handle?
Is Andrè Maier Photo.
Okay, and AndrèMaier.com. And we'll put this in the show notes. It's spelled Andre, Andrè Maier, Maier. weddingbizchat.com. Well, Andrè, this was a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time with me.
Awesome. Thank you. This is super amazing. Thank you so much, Andy. Yeah, I love it.
So thank you for listening to my conversation with the incredible photographer, Andrè Maier. Be sure to listen to our follow-on segment, The Next Level, in which my co-host and I tease out some of the highlights of the interview to help improve your business and hopefully your life. And please share Andrè's episode with your colleagues and friends. If you enjoyed it, we love great reviews. It definitely helps people find us, so we would thank you for that. And I want to mention that next week's guests, plural, I interviewed 2 people at a time, Kelly McCleskey-Delato, I hope I'm saying that right, of A Savvy Event, and Nancy Lu Chin of Nancy Lu Chin Designs. They are both really successful in their own rights, in their own businesses, and they have partnered together to put on a wonderful conference called Oh So Inspired. I know many of you already know about that. You're now going to have a chance to get the backstory on it. It was a really, really fun interview, and it's also very inspiring. So be sure to check this out next week. Follow us on Instagram if you are not already doing that at Wedding Biz Show, and we'll catch you next week.